There's a train coming, you don't need no baggage, you just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesel humming. Don't need no ticket, you just thank the Lord. People get ready for the train to Jordan, picking up passengers from coast to coast. Faith is the key, open the doors and board them. There's room for all of us among the loved most. There ain't no room for the hopeless sinner who would hurt all mankind just to save his own. Have pity on those whose chances are thinner, 'cause there's no hiding place for the kingdom's throne. Oh, people get ready, for the train is coming. You don't need no baggage, you just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesels humming. Don't need no ticket, you just thank the Lord. You don't need no ticket, you just thank the Lord.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I asked Maya to help me with this sermon. That was the first part of the sermon. You don't need no ticket, you don't need no baggage, you just get on board. Someone asked me recently to tell about how I got involved with Voice, Virginians Organized for Interfaith Community Engagement. It all started with 9/11, actually. I had just arrived in Arlington, and in that time of grief and fear, I knew I had to meet other faith leaders in the community. I knew we had to bring people together because everyone was in such a state. As we started getting to know each other, having conversations, planning programs and prayers, and meeting about what more we could do, the imam, the rabbi, the priest, and me, I started to hear from other folks that it was the first time they'd gone to such gatherings in Northern Virginia, when there were so many people of color and so many people with different faiths and different languages and races in one place. And so we kept meeting, and our numbers grew. And after several years, we became Voice. And UUCA and our own lay leaders have been a big part of Voice's success. Over and over, I've been so glad we've had Voice organized to be a unified, multi-faith presence to respond to crises, to organize people and organize money. Voice won a quarter billion dollars from the big banks, which devastated Prince William County in the foreclosure crisis. It's won millions in state money for dental care for poor folks, and $1 million of private money for that. It's won millions in Fairfax County for recreational facilities to preserve and win new millions for affordable housing. In fact, Voice's work is so amazing. Over the years, elected officials went from being skeptical and condescending to being really impressed. And now they call us up and they ask us to come meet with them. A few months ago, I traveled to Richmond, where I received, on behalf of Voice, this award from Governor McAuliffe. It's the Outstanding Faith-Based Volunteer Organization Award for the state of Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I felt, you know, even if they just sort of see it as a plain old regular award, for me, I knew there was a lot behind it, that we got that recognition. When we started organizing in the early days, people would say to us, "So what's your issue?" We already have groups working on all the issues. And I would say back, we only have one issue, really. And that issue is building power so that we can win on issues, not just work on them, but win. And how do we do that? We do that by connecting people who have never been connected before. Rich and poor, immigrant, black, Muslim, Jew, Catholic, helping each person tap into their own power, and then figuring out who they can connect with and how they can use and when they can use that power. So the issue is power. UCA and the thousands of people in Voice aren't just nice people wishing the world would change. We are powerful people making the world change. We are people who are discovering a power that was actually born in us, but many of us forget we have it. The inalienable truth that we can act to co-create a better world. This really is our shared religion in this multi-faith world, and this really is democracy. We don't have to have any credentials or any elected office to make a difference in this world. All we have to do is get on board.
People get bread, there's a train coming. Don't need no baggage, you just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesels humming. Don't need no ticket, you just thank the Lord.
Parker Palmer is a spiritual teacher. He's a Quaker who has inspired a lot of the work that we've been doing here in our covenant groups. He wrote a book called Healing the Heart of Democracy, The Courage to Create a Politics Worthy of the Human Spirit. I commend that book to you all. Parker takes a great, deep and wise look at the loss of values that have impoverished American democracy and public life. He says, for those of us who want to see democracy survive and thrive, and we are legion, the heart is where everything begins. That grounded place in each of us where we can overcome fear and rediscover that we are members of one another and embrace the conflicts that threaten democracy as openings to new life for us and our nation. The human heart, this vital core of the human self, holds the power to destroy democracy or to make it whole. That is why our 19th century visitor, Alex de Tocqueville, insisted in his classic Democracy in America that democracy's future depends heavily on generations of American citizens, generation after generation, cultivating the habits of the heart that support political wholeness. According to de Tocqueville and Parker Palmer, there are 5 habits of the heart which are necessary for us to heal our democracy, keep it vital. 1 is to understand that we're all in this together. 2 is to develop an appreciation for the value of otherness. 3 is to cultivate the ability to hold tension in life-giving ways. 4, generate a sense of personal voice and agency. And 5, strengthen our capacity to create community. 5 habits of the heart that if we cultivate them personally and then in our communities, will heal our democracy. We oftentimes resist the first habit of understanding that we're all in this together because it's easier to pretend that we're living in our individual silos. You know, just we're taking care of ourselves, we're doing okay. And we ignore the fact that we really do need each other and all of our othernesses. When you step outside of your silo and understand your interconnectedness with people different from you, life becomes more complicated, yes, and ethically demanding. But the bottom line is, do you stand for narrow self-interest or for the common good? And do you understand that narrow self-interest is actually ultimately self-defeating? So it's not really in your self-interest. Only think about it. While caring for the common good is actually the best way to care for yourself and those you love. So, of course, this is not a new idea. Way back in the early part of the 20th century, the philosopher John Dewey wrote a book. And he said, the fundamental beliefs and practices of democracy are now challenged as they never have been before. This was after World War I. He said, democracy is at greatest risk when it has not become part of the bone and blood of the people in the daily conduct of its life. Democracy is imperiled when democratic processes are limited to a parliament, to elections, to combats between parties. So Dewey thinks that unless democratic habits of thought and action are part of the fiber of a people, political democracy will be insecure. It has to be buttressed by the presence of democratic methods in all of our social relationships. So here we are, over about a century later, and our democracy is in peril, or at least kind of crazy right now, wouldn't you say? When people are not in relationship, they don't understand the link between their heart's needs and that of people different from them, and that's when democracy fails. The politics of relationship builds hope and creativity, and when people lose track of the power of the divine within each of them, they either become narcissistically entitled and demanding, or they become victims, feeling disempowered, becoming consumers of whatever the powerful, whatever demagogue has to sell them. So Northern Virginia is beginning to look like the new America, ethnically diverse, many religions, newer economies based on technology and education. So we, here in Northern Virginia, we could actually model to the nation of how to revive democracy, how to bring diverse voices together to care for the well-being of all, while enjoying and caring about the needs of people different from us. We can create the political will through our relationships across social boundaries, through our organizing and our votes, to shape a community our hearts long for. Throughout our history, democracy gets stronger each time there is a movement for the people, from the people. When they organize to bring change, look back over our history, votes for women, civil rights for African Americans, for farm workers, for people who are LGBT, for factory workers. Oh, and by the way, here's a side note. This was not in my original thoughts for this sermon, but yesterday I read in the Post something that surprised me, and I'm sorry if you all know all about this, but I want to put it out there because it's shocked me. Did you know there's an issue on the Virginia ballot, issue number 1, to put the right to work into Virginia's Constitution? And it sounds, right to work sounds great, but right to work is actually the death of unions. If it's in the Constitution, nobody can change it, the governor can't veto it. It means that unions will die and right to work becomes a right for people to pay anybody they want as little as they want, because there's no chance for unionization. So I don't know about you, but learn about the issue, and I'm voting no on number 1 on November 8th. So organized movements are when our country's democracy comes alive, and it's woven into the fabric of our history. And I'm here to tell you today, I really think the way things are going in our political process the last 15, 20 years, it's not the history of our democracy that needs organized movements, it's the future now that needs multi-faith, multi-ethnic, multi-generational organized movements, like Black Lives Matter, like North Carolina's NAACP Moral Revival spreading across the nation, like labor unions, and like Voice right here. And movements like Voice depend upon people of faith, people who will listen to their own hearts and won't be scared to listen to the hearts of their neighbors, and can build a sense of community even when there's a lot of differences, because then together they can help move towards the common good. It starts with you and me and our neighbors, and you don't need to be anything more special than who you are. So come on, it starts with us.